Welcome to the Recovering Perfectionist Podcast, where I empower you to develop sustainable habits, challenge society, and take messy action. I'm Christine, life balance coach and world champion ballroom dancer, and I believe that everyone has the power to create their very own life by design. The Recovering Perfectionist Podcast was created with a mission to encourage a life of abundance by finding peace and acceptance in our own imperfections and developing healthy self-love through sustainable habits and manifestation. It's time to align with the universe for the full human experience and redefine what it really means to be successful.
It's too good, the secret is out and wow.
Welcome back to the Recovering Perfectionist Podcast. I am so excited for my guest today. I am here with Zava, and he is, among many things, wears all the hats, but first and foremost, an artist, performer, singer, dancer, all the things. And I'm so excited for you guys to meet him. Welcome, Zava.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. This is so cool.
You are so welcome. And I think it should be said that sometimes I'll interview people who I've known in the past, and sometimes it's brand new people that find the podcast and they're like, I want to be a guest. And then we kind of discuss what we're going to talk about. But you and I kind of have a history.
Yes, we go back.
We do. So you were in, we have a couple of connections actually with my mom and my brother. So go ahead and explain that a little bit.
So I went to high school at Blue Valley High School, and your mom was my French teacher for I think maybe freshman and sophomore year. And then I quit French class because I was like, something happened where they were like, oh, you have your foreign language credit, you don't need to take this class anymore. And I was like, well, then I'm not going to. And your mom was so sad because we loved each other. And I was like, I'm sorry. And then Alex, your brother, we just grew up doing theater stuff together. And now that we're both into music, and just a great friend. And I think just one of those friends that you can just reach out and just be like, hey, I have a new song. What do you think of this? And just super honest. And I love him. So I love your family. You guys are all super talented. And
oh my God, people. We love you too. Yeah. And you got to meet one of my besties last time when I think Alex is in town. Leah?
Yes.
Right.
They were like
a show.
Yeah, we did this concert at the Record Bar, which, that was my first time performing there. I'd seen artists there, which was really cool. But Alex was like, oh, I'll be in town. And I was like, you should come. And so I met Leah, and they were two of the 10 people that were there. It was so great.
But then, Leah and Alex have that big energy. So they were the audience.
Which honestly, I kind of didn't hate. It was it was so chill, so relaxed. And so I think, we all just had a really good time, but great people. I
love that. I love that. So talk to me a little bit, because obviously high school, I'm not going to age us here, but it's been a minute for both of us.
It's been a minute. Yes, you are correct.
So, but also I've been seeing, all of your stuff and, all of your content and all of the things you've been posting. And it's very exciting to see. Also, Zava is your stage name. Mm-hmm. Right. So that's exciting that you're creating this brand, this persona, this art around what it is that you're trying to put out into the world. Talk to me a little bit about that, because I think there's nothing more that matches with kind of perfectionism when you are trying to create some sort of a brand around who you are and what you're doing. We know Lady Gaga, all of that kind of stuff.
Totally.
Even Beyonce has her little Sasha Fierce, all these great artists that have created these brands. I can just imagine the kind of back and forth you play with yourself. Is this the message I want to put out? Is this what people expect from me, but I don't necessarily align with? Talk about that process of how you go through that.
Totally. Everything you just said is very relatable. So I always wanted a stage name, ever since I was younger. So my real name is Taylor, my last name is Avaspor, and I always just thought about it. So I released 2 albums under my actual name. And then in 2019, I started writing a new song, which was Style. That was my first song that I released under Zava. And it was like just the most focused sonically I think I'd ever been. It was very poppy, just like really committed to the type of music that I wanted to make. And I remember, so I am half Persian, and the first 4 letters of my last name, AVAZ, means voice or song in Persian, which I never knew.
Wow.
Never knew until like literally I was like 29. And I called my dad and I was like, okay, I was just like doing some research and I found this. Is this real? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, why have you literally never told me this? Like, I'm the only person in my family that sings. So I was like, okay, AVAZ, I feel like there's something there. And then I flipped it because Persians read from right to left. So it's opposite us. And that's where Zava came from.
I love that.
Yeah. And so it honestly, it doesn't necessarily feel like a brand because it's like, well, that's just part of who I am. It's just like, it's my name. It's every ancestor that came before me. And so there has been a lot of like inner discussion with myself about like, okay, well, how do I want to share myself essentially with the world? Like it's not so much about how I'm being perceived. It's more just like, what do I want to share? And so I think, there are times where it's like, it's just kind of determining like, is this what I want to put out? So, yeah, but I think because it feels like it is a part of me, like, I know that I can't fail because it's like, as long as I kind of am in touch with myself and just the roots of who I am, I think I really can't ever go wrong,
Yeah, I totally agree. That's such a great story on how you came up with your name. Like, I love that.
Yes. And a lot of people don't know that, so I always try to like say that, because like being half Persian, like, I don't think people, like when they look at me, they probably think there's maybe something there, but it's usually like Italian or, Greek or something like that. Just to kind of have those like Middle Eastern roots, within myself, and really to like embrace it and, like, this is who I am,
Totally. Yeah. Well, I can highly relate to the fact that like I'm 50% French, but I speak French fluently, have dual citizenship and everything. And everyone looks at me like, oh, that white American girl. And I'm like, no, because I don't have a cool accent like my dad. And, and my husband is like, he's fully Haitian, both parents Haitian, speaks with an accent, wears his beautiful, all of it. Like it's very obvious. So it's like, sometimes I'm just like, man, like, I wish there was more of like a cultural recognition, but you're right. That's how we are. We have to just share ourselves with the world in a different way.
Yep. Totally.
So, I love that. So I assume that you write a lot of your music, because a lot of, and I think I knew that already because I had chatted with Alex a little bit too. And I think that a lot of, you just get really attached to what you're singing and you want it to be, and you end up getting into the production side of it, almost
totally
just because you have to. And so how does that, because I know for me, whenever like I'm producing, for me, it's on the dance side. So if I'm doing a choreography, I'm always like, oh man, is that enough? Or should we be doing more? Or is that exciting enough? Or maybe it's too crazy, like you start to like second guess yourself all through it. I'm sure you do the same in your music, but like when you get to a point where you're like, okay, it's done. Like, and here it is, we've mastered it, we've mixed it, we've done all the things. And now it's like, what's your process a little bit of getting to that point of not feeling like trying to get rid of some of that perfectionism, being like, listen, it's got to be done eventually and it's got to go out.
Oh my God. That I will tell you that as a recovering perfectionist, which is why I'm so happy to be on this podcast, because I totally relate to you and just that phrase.
Yeah.
Like, for example, Style, that was the first song that I did under Zava. And I wrote and produced that song myself. So like, writing songs is something that I've kind of always done. So it's kind of just felt like, okay, well, I have something that I want to say, but then it's like how to say it. So like with the production element of it, like because I don't play any instruments, but because I have so much music theory knowledge, I can hear every instrument in the way that I want it to sound. So like I have Logic on my computer and I would just like make a beat, then I would add synthesizers, then this, then that. So it's just like over time you're like kind of creating this piece.
Yeah.
And I noticed with that song, like it took me months to finalize the production because I would listen to, like, I would make a demo, listen to it in my car, in my headphones, and then I'd be like, oh, I should add this here, like these bells or this or whatever it is. So like for that song, like truly to get to the place where it was like, okay, I am ready for this to be signed, sealed, delivered out to the public. It was a big moment for me because it was like I literally created this from my mind like into reality.
That's amazing.
And it's
and
so
also like
hard.
it was the first song that you put out as your stage name.
Yep.
So was that like, did it feel different? Like the only thing I can relate to that is I just got married, so now I have a new last name, and so people are calling me like Miss Noel instead of Miss Barr, but or Miss Barr. But like, do you feel like that was like a huge pressure too, that maybe that's why it took a little bit longer, is like this is like the first thing people are going to hear under Zava?
Yeah, honestly, so I think the old me who was just a perfectionist, like, which is driven by shame and all that stuff that I've learned through therapy, like, yeah, we get it.
Yes, millennial therapy, come through.
Come on, baby. I cannot
healing.
tell you. Whoever is listening to this, if you feel like therapy is an option for you, I cannot recommend it enough. It has helped me get over this perfectionist thing. So now it's like, I did feel pressure, but it was more just like, this is what it always comes down to. I want to feel proud of the work that I'm putting out into the world.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like, it's not, is it perfect? It's like, is this exactly the way that I want it to be?
Right.
In order to share it with the world, Right. So there was the pressure, but I think I just wholeheartedly believed in the song and this new direction for myself that it just felt so right, And
I think,
when it was released, I was like, woo.
Yeah, I relate highly to that, is that I feel like there's this like fence that you kind of cross over, you know what I mean? Or this chapter where once you understand what perfectionism does to work for you and against you, that you get to a point where you start to be like, what am I trying to put out into the world? And what do I want that to look like? And that's like, because I think the concept, like you said, of perfectionism comes from obviously shame and approval and validation, all of these different things. But that's also like an external appreciation of what it is that you're trying to do. Right? You're not like, why are we factoring in everybody else's opinion when you can't make everybody happy? We've seen that time and time again through history, that like everyone's going to be divided and find their own, category of what they want to represent. And so you really just have to find your audience. And in doing that, it's just really being your true authentic self. So perfectionism, in the sense of that is like, I think that's where perfectionism can work for you, is like, we still want it to be the best product ever, but we want it to be what we approve and not worry about the validation and all of that external,
Totally. And as artists, I think that is such a complex issue, because it's like, when you do a show, like there's an audience, right? Like there's always this kind of like two-way feedback.
Right.
Like
it's a conversation.
You're sharing something, and like obviously you would love for it to be received well, but you're not making the art for someone else, So it's kind of like what you were just saying. It's like using that quality within you that is like, okay, I have high standards. I want things to be good. I want to feel proud of the work that I put out. Yeah. Like, I think that the people who will, it's like that TikTok thing that's like, the girls who get it, and the girls who don't.
Right.
Like,
right.
And if you don't get it, that is so cool. There are millions of other artists.
That's it. I'm just not your person. World. Yeah.
Yes. And that is cool,
Right. Well, it's like the other one, that the meme that says that like, you're going to be too much for some people and those just aren't your people. And I completely feel that way, because I felt that way my whole life, where I'm just like, I am just a lot for most people. And that's fine, because it keeps my inner circle small and people that I trust and that I feel safe with. And that
Right.
allow me to express myself and be me without trying to put me in a box,
Totally. Totally.
you know?
And really, like, that was such a monumental shift for me, like, creatively, artistically, because it was like you were saying before, like the negative aspect of being a perfectionist is like doing something for external validation.
Right.
And whether it's like musically or just in life, like for me, releasing the need for external validation. Like obviously, like in your close relationships, like you want to feel secure and stuff like that.
Of
But
course.
like if I write a song or if I do a dance on TikTok or if I, whatever it is that I'm sharing with the world, if
Mm-hmm.
there is someone out there who doesn't like it, there's going to be someone else out there who's like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like I
Right.
relate to this,
Right.
And so one of the songs that I put out last year, which is called Electric, and that was like one of the singles that I was so hyped about because I wrote it pre-COVID, had all these plans for 2020, like a music video and all this
Oh,
stuff. And then,
totally.
you know,
Yeah.
like all
Yeah.
of us, all the plans just went out the window.
Sure.
And so I remember like right before I dropped it in 2021, so a year later, I literally was listening to it and I was like, I genuinely don't even care if not a single person in this world likes this song because it has affected me so deeply. And
Right.
just from writing it had helped me really kind of evolve and move forward and
Well, right.
just,
I'm saying like the therapeutic aspect of just creating art sometimes
mm,
is enough for certain pieces.
yes,
Mhm.
yes. And of course I was like, I think the track is hot. Like it literally makes me feel so powerful.
Right.
And I want other people to feel that. If
Of course.
anything, don't even say, I don't care about like, how does he sound? Whatever. It's really about how you feel as the listener, you know?
Yes.
And so just getting to the point where I was like, it's not arrogance. It's not like, this is the shit. Like, I don't fucking care what anyone thinks, but it's more just like, I am so proud of this that now it's kind of like in everyone else's hands, you know?
Yeah. I love that.
So that
I
was
love
cool.
that.
Yeah.
No, that's really awesome. So, okay, so going back to a little bit of what you said and kind of piggybacking off of this last point is putting out something like for you, it's music, for me, it's dance, for other people
Mm,
can be art, paintings, whatever, for anything in the art realm, because that is, I feel like, a genre that really shapes generations, right? We're
mm,
shaped by Whitney Houston, Michael Jackson,
yep. Yep.
NFTs are now going to become a huge thing. Like all of this art type things are going to, that's what really helps culture move forward, and
Yep.
evolve. And so do you ever feel, because I know that Lady Gaga has been very open about this at the beginning, like Just Dance is like, she can't even listen to it. It's like nails on a chalkboard for her. But it was things like that she was kind of almost forced to put out because of labels and different things and like an image they were creating for her versus what she actually wanted to put out, which is more like Joanne stuff, which whether it was going to hit or not, same thing with Justin Timberlake with like Future Sex Love Sounds. And then he put out like, stuff with Chris Stapleton and everyone was like, oh, that's so far from but that's where he is in his life, and
Yep.
do
Yep.
you ever feel like when you're putting something out, I mean, obviously it is different when you have a record label like breathing down your neck and they're paying everything. So it's like, you don't really have a choice. But the cool part about being
Totally.
independent, and my brother feels the same way, is like, he chooses his sound. He's in there mixing and, with the producer saying like, we need to change this instrument. And he's like he's like picking every little note apart, but like making it so that it's what he wants. Not,
Hmm.
I will say that he still has a moment where it's like, what is happening in the world right now? You know what I'm saying? Like, what's the music that people are listening to? Do you take that into consideration of like what is popular, what's not, what's trending, what's not, and then like what would maybe work for your sound, or you just kind of roll with what feels good to you, or a little bit of both?
Um, so honest to God, I feel like artistry, like so many things in life, it doesn't need to be so concrete, like
Right.
if Lady Gaga wants to write a Joanne album, like let the woman do whatever she
Let
wants. You
her
know what I
live.
mean?
Yeah.
Let her live. Like she is so talented. She has so much to offer besides just a fucking banger. I'm so sorry that I'm cursing. I don't know
No,
if
I
you
love it.
I'm like, you can bleep
We're
it
adults now.
out. But no, it's just so I have come to respect artists who do kind of just go like totally different direction,
Mhm.
because it's like that's who we are as humans, you know, like we're that goes back to the whole brand thing. Like if
Right.
Lady Gaga only dropped dance pop tracks, like the gays would be fed. Listen, we love that shit. But I like to see different sides to artists, you know, it
Right.
kind of just lets me see into like the human side of you. So
Right.
for me, I mean, I feel like I'm kind of going through a shift right now where if you go to Spotify and you listen to all my music, it is pop, 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 pop as fuck, you know, and I
Yes.
love pop music. So
Right.
I'm very unashamed about that
I
shit.
mean, that we grew up on that. Like that's our
Yes.
childhood.
Listen, you just said, you know, Whitney Houston, Michael Jackson, Beyonce, Janet Jackson, like
Oh,
Madonna, all these like
yeah.
Spice. I mean, for me, Spice Girl,
Oh
like
my
all
God,
these
I was just about
iconic,
to say I heard a Spice Girls song in the
yes,
Whole Foods the other day and I was jamming.
iconic. And see, that's the thing is that
Like, this
it's
is
that
my
music that
childhood.
makes you feel something,
Yes.
you know, feel good.
NSYNC,
So
Backstreet Boys, like that was our
come on,
jam,
Britney
man.
Spears,
Come
Christina,
on.
like
Oh,
there's so
totally.
many. We grew up with such, honestly, like such great music. And even,
Totally.
you know, I don't know. I feel like I'm so inspired by so many different kinds of music, which is why I don't really feel, I mean, I did kind of in the like maybe like last year feel pressure to kind of stay within the same type of sound.
Yeah.
But now that I don't know, I just like I've been so inspired by like a lot of Black women artists in
Mm,
R&B in the past like year or two, like Victoria Monet, Chloe and Halle,
yes.
Tinashe, like so even going back to like Janet Jackson, like women that literally are the blueprint for so much of what is
Yeah.
mainstream today. And
Brandy.
yes,
I mean,
Brandy is so
Brandy
good.
coming back on
Yes.
Queens, giving us like indie
Yes.
artist soul. Like,
I
yes.
know. And I think what is so inspiring to me is that I feel like these artists, these women, they write and perform music that is literally from their soul. It's not
Mhm.
trying to be anything. It's like,
Right.
and I think that's what makes them trendsetters is that they're just being authentically themselves. And whether that music is
Mhm.
kind of, I mean, I personally think that they are the ones like setting the trends, and then other people in pop,
Totally.
you know, popular music kind of take it on.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of intention of just like what feels good to me, and you know, I just want to end up sharing that with the world. That's
Yeah.
kind of like the space that I've been in.
I love that.
So letting go of the pressure of it needing to sound like anything or be anything, you know, it's just like
That's the thing.
in this moment, what does it feel like, you know?
Right. Oh no, totally. Yeah. And we were just talking about that a little bit before too, like I said with this podcast, like this is probably the
Yes.
first project that I've ever put a lot of myself into that I'm not needing a specific result back. Because I think that's the thing. I think that's where perfectionism really
Oof.
starts to affect us negatively is we anticipate an idea, we execute it, and then we're like, this is the result I want, and it can't be anything else. And you almost lock yourself in
Totally.
your own box. And it's like, if that result is not it, you feel like it's a failure. And in reality, like the universe might even have something bigger planned for you that's like, oh, honey, you're thinking small potatoes, or whatever.
Yes.
Like you have to allow it to be free. And like subconsciously, I think we all know that when we're, growing through this whole thing of life. But it's so hard when you put so much of yourself into your art and you want it to be, like you said, well received, so sometimes you want
Totally.
to adjust. Or a big part for me has been like, a lot of it has been business endeavors, not just side hustle projects or fun
Mm,
little art things. And it's like, man, I need this to make money. Do you know what I mean? Like, because if it doesn't, like, I
totally.
poured so much of my time into this that I wasn't working another thing. Like, this needs to start to show results,
For sure.
And so, but what I'm seeing with this podcast, which is the luxury I've been able to provide it, is that people are finding it because, like you said, the name is so relatable.
Mm,
The mission and the messaging is something that everybody wants to discuss right now, because it is how people are trying to move forward and not feel like they're so trapped in that hustle culture, survival mode. And
yes.
and also you know, I mean, the biggest success for me is I found my business partner for my academy through this podcast. Like she literally she was like, I want to be a guest. And like, we just clicked. And like 9 months later, we had an academy. It was insane.
Incredible.
So that's the thing, is that being able to do that. But we were talking also about like how long it takes for something to see the light of day, right? That now all of a sudden, like I'm finally feel like, even saying it out loud is crazy, that I'm in a season of my life right now where like that the plants are starting to grow, that I've been planted and watered. I mean, for so long. And when I say so long, I'm talking years. And not because of pandemic, just because of life and how long it takes for some of these things to develop. But, you know, one business that's taking off right now, it was created 7 years ago and it did its thing, but it fizzled and then it sped up and came down and now it's booming. So it's like, you never can anticipate the growth of something and like when it's actually done. But like, can you speak on that whole, like that iceberg theory of like, all you really see is this tiny little thing. It's like, oh, yay, everything's done. And then like this entire work underneath the surface that people don't see. And then they think that we're overnight successes. And I'm like, oh, honey.
That is such a myth, you know. And I think everyone everyone who's an artist knows that. We get it, you know. But you know, even like, for example, like me and my music, like my first album under my name, I released in 2014. Okay. So it's been 8 years this year, which is so crazy. And I feel like now that my friend finally, like my friend last year was like, you need to get on TikTok. It's the only way that people, you know, outside of Kansas City can hear. And I was I'll be honest, I was very hesitant because I do love my privacy and just, you know, I don't feel like I have I don't know what the word is, like, and this is no judgment towards like influencers, like those people are making money.
Well, they're making a life for themselves, but like my business coach says, like, you know, listen, you can become an influencer, but then you're not really building a business until you start outsourcing or building things off of that with investments, because you're really just a slave to your own business now. And now you have to keep producing and there's no end in sight. You've become an employee of your own business. So that's the scary part. It's very scary. Yeah.
But you know, it's like, as soon as I got on TikTok and I just kind of, what it really comes down to is just believing in yourself, like 1000%, no matter what anyone says on this planet. Like, I believe, like for me, like I went to a Casey Musgraves concert a couple nights ago.
Yeah.
And we were up in the nosebleeds, like my best friend and I were having the time of our lives. But in my soul, while watching this concert and having the best time, I was like, I know that's going to be me someday. Like, just know it, you know? And I think when you start to have that belief, like that's when the tip of the iceberg starts to show. And it's like you have all of these years of foundation and practice and experience and
honing your skill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, trials and tribulations that you go through so that you can get to the point like where you were saying, where it's like, well, now I have this business after years. That is, and it's all, I feel like what it really comes down to, and maybe, you know, tell me if I'm wrong, but it's just like, you have to believe that it's going.
Oh, you absolutely do.
You know?
Yeah, you absolutely do. Yeah, if you don't believe that it's possible, I mean, everyone out there is rooting for you to fail. And I don't want to say it like that, like, oh, well, my family supports me, my friends, of course. But they also, there's this realistic factor that they're all like, if she calls me tomorrow and says, I give up, I'm going to go get a real job, they're not going to look at me and be like, oh, that's shocking, right? They'd be like, well, that's kind of life, right? That's kind of the alternative if something doesn't work out. But like, we have to know that, like, I feel the same way. Like when I went to Derek Huff did his Vegas residency and he was just bouncing around, dancing. I mean, it was crazy, so good. And to see someone from our ballroom industry have their own fucking show in Vegas, I was like, this is amazing. And I just kept looking at him walking through the audience, like tears streaming down my face. My husband was like, are you okay? And I was like, that's gonna be Alex. Like that's gonna fucking be Alex one day. Like I just know it. I know that that's him. And whether he's doing whatever he's doing, singing, dancing, I don't even care, but he's going to be owning an audience, you know. And like, it was just so clear to me. It almost felt like it was him already, you know. It was just like I was getting chills. And so like just knowing that. And then, same thing for myself and my businesses, like, with my husband's business that's blowing up right now, like that was kind of like, oh, okay, we have this business, but it's not something that like it has to like create for us. But for my academy, like I have this like mission behind it of like helping entrepreneurs like not have to go through this struggle of like sacrificing yourself all the time to feel like you have to succeed. And that mission for me is more important to get out to entrepreneurs like us who went through that shit, especially millennials who just have mountains of debt of university thinking this is the only path in life. And I was like, there's a brand new narrative now. And the next generations have to know that they have options and there are tools for them available.
For sure.
That I think is the message I'm trying to really push out. That is more important to me than the dollar value. But I also know that because the message is so strong and so needed, that the dollar value, will follow. And so it is important for me that it is successful in that, because I would like to make a living off of that, because I am so passionate about it. But I agree. I mean, like, if you don't believe in yourself, like everybody else is making choices for your life and living vicariously through you and all of those things, that you have to like steer the ship.
Yep. And I think that's why, like, when you get to the point where someone maybe says like, oh, you are an overnight success, or like, even for Casey Musgraves, like I followed her career since her first album in 2013. And to see her, the last time I saw her was like a House of Blues, like really small and intimate. And then to see her at now the T-Mobile Center in Kansas City, I was just like, I felt just like, it's almost like I knew her. Like, I was just like, I'm so proud of you for getting to this place.
You did it. Yeah.
You did it. And like maybe some person that was there and, just heard of her is seeing her and is like, oh, well, overnight success, right? But it's like,
because they don't know her story.
Right. And all of us, that's the thing, is all of us have a story to where we got to where we are now. So yeah, I mean, I think we get it. It's just like, it's part of the journey where like you have to accept that like whenever that break, quote unquote, or whatever it hits, like you have to know in your soul that every single moment of your life has led up to that.
Totally. Totally. Yeah.
So,
and I think once you get there, that's more the easy part, to be like, oh, let me sit on Ellen and talk about how I had $5 left in my pocket and I was going to go back home and I got that audition, like that's the easy part. It's more like when you have that happen and you don't know if that next audition is going to take, or if that next gig is going to come or whatever, like that's a lifestyle that a lot of people can't live, because the inconsistency of, maybe living paycheck to paycheck or whatever.
I get that.
But then I think about how people, who work 9 to 5s also live paycheck to paycheck, a lot of them. And I'm like, and they're doing something that they don't enjoy, versus like, we get to wake up every morning and make our own schedule and love what we do. And the struggle is real. And we have days where we need some serious therapy. Thank goodness.
Oh my God.
People. But at the end of the day, we can say that we're proud of the way that we're putting things out into the world. And I believe that we are really trying to be the change we want to see.
Yes.
Whether it be through music, through education, through dance, through whatever art form needs to be, the vehicle for that. I think that as artists, we are always trying to shape culture in a way that can make it better.
Yeah. Yes. And I feel like I ask myself this a lot with like my music, where it's like, what's the message? What am I trying to put out? Because I think when I was younger, I was very ego driven, which also kind of led to the perfectionism.
Sure.
But it was more about like, oh, well, I can sing, I can dance, like, look at me, listen to me. And now it's more of like, no, I have a message that it's really, I feel like it's just the stuff that I have learned through my life. And I want to be, like you said, the vehicle, the messenger to like spread that lesson or that message or whatever to other people. And genuinely, like, even just thinking about like a little queer kid, like growing up, I never saw queer representation really in pop culture, so it's like just to have, I think about little me. Like if there was a man who was like singing in his falsetto, dancing, like, you know, having feminine and masculine qualities and just talking about like real life shit, like that would have been monumental to me as a kid,
Right.
And so
Have you seen
when,
all of these, like, the new Encanto movie that we all just can't stop singing?
yes, I
But these
loved it.
little like TikToks that are coming out of like parents that are taping their kids next to the screen and seeing them with the curly hair and the glasses, or like the curly hair, like the little boy, mixed kids. Like they're
Yes,
like, oh my God, this, like, there's finally someone on television that looks like them. And they see
yes.
that and they're 3, 4, 5 years old and they're like, oh my gosh, like the amount of, I just think the amount of therapy they won't need because they see that someone out there exists like them and they are
Yes.
appreciated in this world, versus, like you said, the people who have had to, from our generation. I remember friends of mine who would like telling us that they were gay was like such a whole to do and an ordeal, and are
Uh-huh.
people still going to like me and all of these things. And it's like, finally I think we're coming to a place where people can just be who they want to be, and it's so much more accepted, and we're seeing all of that on television. It's like, oh, there's a non-binary character in this this specific TV show, and
Yes.
it's like, that's great because that's who I am too, or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Representation, like, and I think we're starting
Matters.
to see the effects of representation because it's like,
Yes.
and then I think that in itself proves why art is so important, because you
Mm.
have these kids that see a character that looks like them, in a Disney movie.
Mhm.
Like that is life changing. Like we grew up with the Disney princesses and like the fairy
Right.
tales, which is why I
The
think a lot of the millennials,
perfectionism.
yes, it all comes back to that. We're
And love
like,
is perfect, and your husband's going to come, your prince is going to come on his white horse and he's going to kiss you and everything's going to be great. And it's like, those
yes,
are classic Disney stories, but they do not portray into reality by any means. And
yes,
these new like Luca and Raya and Kanto and all of these new
yes.
Disney or even Pixar storylines are like
Hmm.
explaining how anxiety is a thing and mental health and like,
Yes.
I mean, all of that. I think that the writers behind what is happening, I think these are more adult movies than they are for kids at this point, because we're all appreciating
Yeah.
the messaging behind them and realizing like, oh, this is what we needed to hear the whole time,
The
you know.
whole time. And these kids are getting that message at such a young age.
Thank God.
Yeah, I think it's really setting up the future generations to just have more like self-awareness and like just not to be run so much by like how society is supposed to be. So,
Totally.
yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's so great that you say that they make a very good point about the representation. We're starting to finally see the effects of that, because it's been a few years now where we started seeing, all these different castings and colors, shapes,
Yeah.
sizes, sexualities, all of that. But now I think we're just now starting to see the first line of effects, because it takes a few years, that everyone's like,
Yeah.
oh, wow, there's like a breath of fresh air that's coming through, saying like, wow,
Yeah.
this is happening and it's here to stay.
And I think that has inspired me as an artist, because I think like even seeing Eternals, like Marvel, I'm a big
Yeah,
MCU
yeah, yeah, yeah.
person,
My
but
husband is
seeing
too.
the actress who's deaf and like using sign language in the movie, I was like, I
Yes.
can't even imagine how many people that deeply like affected. Or
Wow, yeah.
the gay couple like in a Marvel movie who like kiss and have a child. I was like, this is so
Yes.
important because that's what the world looks like.
That's
It's
what the world
not
looks like. Right.
it's not this thin white, you know, hetero person. It's like
Yeah.
there's so much more than just that. And there's nothing wrong with that, but there's just
No. Yeah.
it's a whole world of people.
Totally. Absolutely. And we all see now that our worlds are all, we have representation of that everywhere in our life. Like you said, like we need to be able to see that on television and in movies.
Yep.
Totally.
Yep.
So I adore you. I think that what you're doing is amazing. I think
Thank you.
you have so much. I can't wait to see you perform live. I've never seen you perform live. And
Sometime soon.
I know. What's next for you? Like you're currently still in the Midwest.
Yep. So I'm in Kansas City, and it was funny when you were talking about a 9 to 5 job because I call it like I'm living my Hannah Montana life where I
Love
do
it.
have a 9 to 5 job, and then I work from home, thank God.
Oh, good.
But then outside of that, I pursue what really means,
Totally.
something to me. So honestly, currently in this chapter in my life, I feel like I'm very like go with the flow. Like
Mhm.
I've been really focused on TikTok and just kind of again sharing myself with the world because TikTok is like the easiest way to do that nowadays.
Yes.
So kind of just like building a community of like, hey, this is who I am, like not just a singer and a dancer, but this is who I am as a person. Like,
Mm-hmm.
do you click with that? Do you like that? Do you want to be on this journey together?
Mm-hmm.
And I do have, I just finished the mixing process for I think what's going to be my next single.
Yay.
Um, and it's very exciting, like I have plans for like a music video and all that stuff, but I also feel like the world is very there's so much that's
It is.
happening.
It is. But I do think that like I've seen a shift, at least in the last few months, of like how things have gotten people, I guess the CDC would say it's crazier than ever because everyone's getting it. But then I feel like it's becoming more of a flu-like thing that's starting to live around us. So I'm actually more okay with where COVID is going because I think that we all knew last year that we were going to have to start living with it. And as long as it's not putting people on deathbeds or in the hospital, then I think that like, listen, keep your immune system high and healthy
Right.
and do the best that you can. But also, like you said, we have to go back to making our music videos. We have to go back to dancing in public. We have to go back to doing things and having live
For
events.
sure.
And I'm really glad that even though things started ramping up again, because we knew they would over the winter, that places like Vegas and certain places didn't fully shut down again. That it was just like, okay, let's put
Oh,
some more
good.
restrictions.
Good.
But like there were certain things, like even in California, or New York, like I saw some things happening, like events, and I was like, oh wow, things are still going on. I love that. I
Yeah.
think people need to be more creative and do more outdoor things, like it's not that big
Yeah.
of a deal. Um, but I do think that you're right. I mean, there needs to be like, we need to all get back to it.
For sure. And something that I've been super kind of just like aware of is like, I didn't release anything pretty much during like the height of like craziness, like in, late 2020,
Sure.
before we pre-vaccines, I'll say,
Right. Yeah.
because I just felt like a lot of people were just not in the place to really like,
Right.
and especially for my music, which is very poppy and like upbeat and stuff. So I do have things like in the works, but I'm kind of just like enjoying the journey right now and like, you know, enjoying sharing myself with the world. Like I have
Love that.
plans for sure,
Yeah.
but I trust that like I'm attracting the right opportunities,
Yeah.
you know, so it's like the right timing to do that. So I'm kind
I
of
love
really
that.
listen, this is like the exact opposite of being a perfectionist. Like,
It is, but I love that because we need to see the other side. Like we need to
yeah,
know that other side is possible. I feel the same way. Like I feel like
yeah,
even talking about this podcast and how I'm allowing it to just have its journey, like, oh my God, my last podcast, when I tell you, was highly edited, hours of work, didn't put out an episode every week. That was another reason I wanted this to be very organic and that I could produce a lot at a time and not feel like everything had to be so
yeah,
perfect. And
yep,
that is the true recovering perfectionist, is where like I still want to put out a high quality, but it's not going to have to be this thing where I can't, because also we have to take into consideration the fact that content is in so much of demand and it's being
yes,
absorbed and consumed at a much higher rate these days. So we can't keep like that lifestyle is not sustainable to produce as much content as what needs to be consumed. So
yeah,
you have
yeah,
to start really like putting things out in a way. And I think that's why TikTok became such a thing, is people are like, oh my gosh, like let's just go for it. And let's not worry
totally.
about all these videos being so edited and photoshopped and all these things.
And let me tell you what, that is something like honestly, TikTok has kind of helped me kind of unravel this perfectionism, because when I first got on it, it was so, I mean, maybe just because it's like our generation, like whenever you would post something, it was very like here's a performance of me like at a dance competition
Right.
or,
Right.
you know, from a show. But in TikTok, it's like you sit on your couch and you're like, I'm gonna sing this little ditty that someone is playing the piano for. You know what I mean?
That's
Like,
it. That's it.
so it kind of has helped me just to be more in the moment and just be like, oh, well, I
Yes.
want to share this because I love this song, not, or like, I love dancing to this because the choreography makes me feel good, you know?
Yes.
It's
Yes.
not like, you know,
Yeah.
a professional clip from a performance, you know?
Exactly.
So that's been
Exactly.
good for me.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, you're right. TikTok has very much helped with a lot of people's, especially artists. And we've seen other sides of them. Like, it's like, oh man, she's
Yeah.
a great singer, but I didn't know she was that funny. Like,
Right.
like how
Right.
cool.
You're just, I think it's just, you're seeing like the human behind the
Yeah,
screen, you know,
totally.
like, I mean, as much as you can,
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
but yeah, so I think what's next is kind of just like unfolding, like as I take the next step, you know, I don't have like a ton of
I love that.
everything planned out, which is scary, but cool. Yeah.
Super scary, but also so exciting. I'm definitely living my
Yeah.
year this way as well, to be like, listen,
Mm.
put some things out there, but like allow it to go where it needs to go and don't put pressure on anything, because the universe needs to participate. And I think as perfectionists, like when we get to a certain point, it's like we want to control the outcome as much as possible, because we think that our outcome is going to be the best outcome, and we don't allow the universe to play a
Oof.
part in it. And it's like, but that's not how the world works. That's not how energy works.
And that's so much of the picture that I never really saw. Like,
Yeah.
when I accepted that I can only control a certain number of things,
Mhm.
then it really, like, I can control if I practice every single day. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like if I vocalize and I stretch and I practice dancing and all these things, like,
Yeah.
then as long as I'm doing that, I'm good. And then I leave the rest of it truly in the universe's hands. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Totally.
gonna work out the way that it's supposed to, you know?
Totally. It's that belief in yourself that we talked about, like
Belief
that's
in
part
self,
of it.